Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you all to our UAE UK Knowledge Sharing Summit on Decarbonisation of the Built Environment, sponsored by the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors and in partnership with Heriot Watt's Centre for Excellence in Smart and Sustainable Construction. I would like to invite Professor Dame Heather McGregor, Provost and Vice Principal of Heriot Watt University Dubai, to say a few words of welcome.
Your Excellency, Lord Udney Lister, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Heriot Watt University. A university is, of course, a place for the creation and dissemination of knowledge, and nothing is more important than creating and disseminating knowledge in the construction industry. I think that we're all in agreement that the path to net zero is going to be, made or lost, as it were, through the investments that we make in the construction industry, particularly in the area of talent. And that's what we, of course, here, particularly at Heriot Watt University in our Dubai campus, are in the business of doing. What is so great about the UAE UK Business Council, I was saying earlier, that I think it's probably the single most important for us membership body that we belong to, because of the quality of the other organisations that are associated with it, all of which are members, and many of you are here in the room. And what I love about it is that you don't just talk about things. And today is a good example. My understanding of today is that the contributions that you make today and the discussions that you have today will be developed into a policy paper, and that will be presented to both governments, and that we will track and follow the actions that take place as a result. So, we're here today to meet each other, to create and disseminate knowledge, but also to have an impact. And that is what I think is the most important thing of all. So I welcome you to our campus. For those of you who haven't been here before, I should, during COP, the pass that you were given on the way in is valid until the end of Tuesday evening. We're open from 8 in the morning till 6 every day. On the floor above you, there is a wonderful demonstration of about 16 or 17 different companies who are in the business of clean technology. Although we have great catering on this floor, you have on the floor above, there is a special cafe where everything there is prepared using recycled and solar energy. So you will get a real experience of what the world in the future is going to be like. So thank you very much and welcome everybody, and I'll now pass you back to the organisers. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, for those really very kind words of welcome. And of course, what Heather didn't say, of course, is she's been entertaining the King of England, the Foreign Secretary of the UK, the leader of the Scottish Parliament, all this week. Everybody who's anybody from the UK has been visiting here. So, I think that tells you something about this university and this building and what's happening, which I think is pretty impressive. We as the Business Council are really delighted to be partners of Heriot Watt, and particularly their climate hub. And this, as she's already said, is open right through COP28. And we're also so pleased to be hosting today's decarbonisation of the built environment. I can't think of a better place to hold it, given that the campus hosts the Centre of Excellence for Smart and Sustainable Construction, which we will hear a lot more about during the course of the day. We're also very grateful to the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors for supporting today's events, and look forward to watching their presentation on the whole life cycle carbon assessment later in the morning. Heriot Watt University and RICS are members of the UAE UK Business Council, which I co-chair with His Excellency Ahmed Al-Sayar. We aim to bring together leaders, academics, entrepreneurs from both countries to discuss opportunities of collaboration in emerging sectors. I should also give my co-chair's apologies. Unfortunately, he can't be here. He is a minister in the federal government, and therefore, I'm afraid, is actually tied up. I think all the federal ministers have been basically told what they need to do and where they need to be, and however much he might like to come here, he's been told to go elsewhere. So he can't be here, and he does send his apologies to everybody. It's also just worth mentioning that, if I may, to you all, and I must do this quick plug for the Business Council, is that what we're about is basically British companies, British academic institutions, working side by side with Emirati businesses, Emirati institutions. And we are very, very roughly 50-50. Emirati businesses, UK businesses or academics. And we try and keep that mix. So we are very much working for both countries. We're not one-sided. We are both-sided. We believe in trade. Trade for us is the crucial thing, and we believe trade matters a lot and is good for the world. The construction sector has understandably been a major force of discussion at COP28. And as I think all of you know, up to 40% of global carbon emissions are believed to be caused by the built environment. Globally, cement is responsible for 7% of carbon emissions, which means that almost 66% of all construction's emissions are from cement. Developing alternative construction materials, therefore critical in keeping us on a course for net zero by 2050, a target, by the way, which both the UK and the UAE have signed up to. The transport of construction materials should not be overlooked. The UK imports a small quantity of bricks from Bangladesh. Those bricks have a carbon footprint that is 2.5 times that of British-made bricks. So it's important to understand the impact of transportation costs and transportation effects on the carbon footprint. Retrofitting existing buildings is a critical part of the solution. In the UK, we only replace 1% of our building stock per year, which means 80% of the buildings that will be around by in 2050 are already there and will be there by then. These examples illustrate both the seriousness of the challenge and the scale of the commercial opportunity in addressing it. These are also areas where the UK and the UAE share considerable technical expertise, and today's panel discussions will address these issues and also explore how our two countries can work more closely together to share best practice and know-how. As a business council, our role is to inform our government about the concerns and interests of our respective business communities. And with that in mind, I am very pleased to announce early next year we are writing a policy paper summarising the key points from today's discussions and setting out recommendations for closer cooperation between the UK and the UAE on decarbonising the built environment. This paper, which we will produce in partnership with several of you in this room, will then be submitted to both governments for consideration. So your participation in today's event will play a very important role in shaping bilateral engagement in this area. And just again, if I could just add in here, one of the advantages of the Business Councils when we were created jointly between the UK government and the UAE government. So it does give us quite a bit of access, which probably doesn't exist for a lot of other people. And indeed, all the appointments were done jointly between the two countries, and both Brad, he'll remember it well, was interviewed by two separate countries, organisations for his appointment. I was also, and my co-chair were also part of the same process. And one thing that's not often realised is that every year, it happens more than once a year, but there's always a very formal meeting between the UK and the UAE, and that takes place. And the great thing is that we always get a seat at that table. So we actually are in there between the two countries, and we have an opportunity to present papers. So we do get access, and I think that's important. So we can push things. I also want to have a quick word about trade and investment relationship between the UAE and the UK. And it's important that our bilateral trade is now worth 25 billion a year. And that's for both directions. And that's an increase of 47% on last year. So you can see how that is accelerating. And the UAE is the UK's 19th biggest trading partner and our 12th largest export market. So you can see how incredibly important the trade and investment relationship between the two countries is. And of course, you all heard some of the announcements this week about further investment in the UK by the UAE. So with this in mind, I very much look forward to hearing the discussions today and the opportunity of supporting the efforts of everybody in creating a partnership between the UK and the UAE in the built environment. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum and good morning. I would like to start with thanking the university for their kind hospitality today. And also would like to thank you for taking the time today to attend this morning session during what must be a very busy week for all of you. Campbell and I would like to spend a couple of minutes explaining to you the rationale behind the Business Council choosing the decarbonization of the built environment as a key priority campaign. We also would like to explain to you what we hope you can get out of today's session and what would be our next steps. As Lord Udney Lister mentioned, the built environment is responsible for up to 40% of the global carbon emissions. And addressing this issue has been a major topic for the COP negotiators. The UAE and the UK, they have considerable expertise in decarbonizing the built environment and are leaders in technological innovation in this area too. We believe with the right regulatory environment and incentives, both countries can benefit from commercial partnership and educational collaborations. Over the last few months, we held regular working group meetings with the UK and the UAE experts in this field and have narrowed down our focus into three main areas where we think those areas would offer the best potential for further collaboration. Those areas are retrofitting of the built assets, data methodologies and evaluation, and decarbonizing cements and alternative building materials. With that, I hand over to Campbell to take you through what we expect to get out of today's session and our next steps. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Look, it's an exciting session. It's a difficult day for COP today because it's effectively a day off, right? So hopefully this afternoon we'll get an exciting update. So look, thank you for joining us today. As Mohammed said, it's great to see a good turnout, and I think actually it's a clear sign of our shared commitment in making a difference, not only to our industry, but ultimately our fragile planet. And we forget it's not about us, it's actually about the planet. And I think the theme through COP has been quite consistent with that so far, and looking forward to, I guess you could see, the more gritty conversations within COP next week. This afternoon, however, we've got three fantastic and important panel discussions lined up, each focusing on key areas that are critical to our future success. Our Business Council, however, isn't just about hosting events, as Mohammed and I talk about. We're also here to serve, as the gentleman said, to serve as a vital link between the business community and our governments. We're doing very well, but we could do so much more, and particularly with Emirati businesses, nationalisation, embracing that properly, and actually bringing people into the future success of both here and the UK. It is, however, our job to highlight new opportunities for both collaboration and turn these into solid business partnerships and addressing any challenges that ultimately stand in our way. And certainly the pace of change that we have in the UAE, and particularly in Dubai, there are a lot of challenges that stand in our way, and we tend to get past them quite quickly. But then how do we reinforce that back into the UK? So look, the main, as we said previously, the main output from today is that policy paper, and it's absolutely critical. And it will advise both the UAE and UK governments on how to create an optimal environment for businesses in both countries to collaborate, especially in building a more sustainable, lower carbon construction sector as well. This isn't just our perspective, it's a collective view though, and I think representing the insights of all our members and stakeholders is even more prevalent today. Early next year, we'll be reaching out to you for both your input on this paper and strongly encourage all of you to have an input. It's our place to make that difference both here and in the UK, and certainly living in the UAE, we always like to strive to be the best in the world. It's vital that we get this right, and your feedback, as I said, will be absolutely critical. So look, Mohammed and I would like to take a moment to express our gratitude firstly to Heriot-Watt University and the Centre of Smart and Sustainable Construction, as well as the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, obviously, for their valuable support and guidance, and long may it continue. Thank you again for being here. I think it'll be a fantastic day. Your involvement is essential. and we move forward with this initiative. Look, I'm personally looking forward to working together with all of you in the coming year, and I think actually the important thing is we get some tangible realities of what we're doing. We've had some great conversations, but it's actually to close them out. We're doing some great work with University of Cambridge around green cement, but actually how do we make it a real practice in the implementation of projects? You know, some of us are involved in the new DEWA building. There's no green elements going into that building, although it will be a net zero building in its use. How do we actually build that into the building process? So look, have a fantastic day. It's great to be here, and been a fantastic operation, and great that we've got passes till Tuesday as well. So thank you again very much indeed.
Next, giving the keynote address, it is my honor and absolute privilege to welcome to the stage His Excellency Dr. Abdullah Al-Nuaimi, Chair for the Center of Excellence for Smart and Sustainable Construction.
My colleagues have set the floor for the good part of trades and such a wonderful setup of a trade between United Kingdom and United Arab Emirates. I would actually be looking into the construction industry and the built environment from probably the other side. And I'm more into the climate change. So I would actually be speaking about emissions. And I don't want really to set the stage for a very dark and gloomy picture of our industry, but it is, unfortunately, it is a polluting industry, and we really need to think hard to really get rid of at least part of its emission. We know that the construction industry is a source of hazards. We know that 23% of our air is actually polluted by the industry. We know that 40% of our drinking water is also polluted by the industry. And we also know that 50% of all our landfill is also polluted by this industry. So the construction industry as a whole is really an issue when it comes to climate change and the warming of our earth. Now the percentage is different. Mohammed spoke about 40% of the emission comes from the industry. Other sources say probably less. We really need to look into, step down a little bit and look into the built environment rather than looking into the industry where the trade and the businesses and everything. Let's concentrate maybe in the built environment and see how can we together make this industry decarbonized or partially decarbonized, or maybe part of it is friendly to our environment and friendly to the people. A couple of weeks ago, I wrote an article in a Comment Central in the UK, speaking of five ways of looking into the built environment and how we can decarbonize it. And one of the things that Lord Arzet spoke about is to retrofit, and that is very essential to retrofit. But really the built environment is a sort of hazards. It is actually consuming about 30% of the energy and emitting about 27% of that particular sector to the analysis. So 30% of our energy is used by or consumed by that built environment. And really speaking, 30% is a big number when it comes to the consumption. And 27% is really a huge number when it comes to. So if we look into in numbers, what does that 15% or 27% represent in terms of emissions? that is about 15 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent dumped into the atmosphere by this built environment. And to give this relevant to the emissions, United Arab Emirates emit about 200 million tons. So that is, that 1.5 billion is about 7-8 times as much as we in a year. So that is very essential to look into. And where does that come from? If we take major components, we take the cement, for example, aggregates. If cement is a country, this cement is actually comes after, is the third emitter. After China, United States, and then cement, and then comes the European Union and so forth. So the cement that we actually made some 60, 70 years ago is the heart of all the, or most of the emissions. So how far can our technologies or the existing technologies get rid of this or reduce that? There are some alternatives. Matured, I'm not sure that there are matured enough to replace the cement. But technology, I believe, would be able to probably look into this and see that we are off the hook. Now, with the growing public awareness and concerns, people started knowing. I think in the agreements, we always think about adoption and we think about many things, but we've missed one important issue, and that is the enlightenment. We really need to look into how people conceive this. Do they know that we are in an era where climate is really hampering our life? Are we aware that we get the best of our industries or not? Sometimes we take things as we see it, as it comes. When it comes particularly from the existing industries, I believe that if we can together, both countries today, but the whole globe tomorrow, that we really need to cooperate in finding a way finding a way to replace this cement and others. In 1996, we had a gas that's said to be depleting our ozone. And the whole globe, under a different agreement, that I think a great agreement, is the Montreal Agreement at that time, the whole globe, worked together, and we managed to get rid of that gas. But unfortunately, the technology came up with a different gas, a brother to the depleting gas, to the ozone, but that gas is again part of our construction, a part of our built environment. We see it today in our ACs, in our warming, in our refrigeration, in our that is also again a growing gas that we really don't know, that it is required to be enlightened about. People need to know that the air conditioning is, thank you very much, thank you. The air conditioning gases that we use in most of our air conditioning systems and in our heating systems are potent. And that potent gas is growing 6% every year. I will not be surprised that as we rally together to reduce the emission of carbon dioxide, methane, oil and gas, in a decade or so, there might be a gas that we have not thought about today. Maybe we know, but we are not working hard enough to remove it from our built environment, from our systems, and have another gas that is friendly and good to the environment. Same goes for the color of the rainbow. Today we look into hydrogen as a safer to our built environment, to the people, and we forgot. We don't really look into how far this green hydrogen that we talk about can actually produce gases that might be 300 times as potent as carbon dioxide that we are fighting all the oil companies to remove. I'm very glad to see the oil company in United Arab Emirates yesterday or the day before yesterday getting together. And this is a success for COP28 and for all of us, that these petroleum companies getting together. But we really need, as a technologist, we really need to look back and say what others that might be hazardous enough in the future. I call for something to be looked into, even for nitrous oxide. That is the 300 or 265 times as potent as carbon dioxide. The gas that we see, some of them are about 1,700 as potent in global warming potential. So we really need to look into the built environment as careful as we can, but we really need to think into the components of it, not only looking into how we trade the business of it. It's good to do that good trading business in the construction industry, but if we really care about the environment, if we really want to reduce the global warming, we really need to also look into what would happen if we keep the industry as it is. I will not take much of your time, but I really, I would try to list some of the numbers that I have seen within my article, and it gives that first one is not to build. I think in the UK there is at least in London. I was a couple of months ago. I was lecturing in one of the universities in London, and I knew that there are some regulation not to build. And there was an architect who was telling me that there is a hospital that they're trying to build, and they told them you really need to be friendly to the environment, and that is really nice. Lord Austin spoke about the retrofitting, and that is very essential. Can we look into upgrading our existing buildings with some smart solutions that are good and friendly to the environment? Because if we keep building, we keep using the same material, and we keep dumping the same emissions, and then life would continue. And no matter how much politicians can meet in COPs and the conferences and do decisions, if we as technicians, as technologists, as thinkers, as researchers, as institutions, do not really care about what they say that need to be done, I think we would actually keep hammering our environment with all what it takes. Second thing is our planners. When we think into planning new cities, I'm very pleased to see in the United Arab Emirates some smart cities being planned. I was 2 days ago. I was in the American University of Sharjah with three students who are actually doctorate students who are actually looking into urban planning and thinking on how can we replan some areas in the existing city of Sharjah. And I saw amazing ideas. I have even learned from them something that I have not thought about. I think institutions can help us a lot, can give us something that we probably didn't think of, because this is, I always assume that the climate change issue and the heating of our environment, our global environment, came from technologies and science, and only technology and science can solve it. Nobody, carpooling and that would not do a lot. Technologies can do it. But if we keep talking about reduce food, not reduce food, don't eat little, that is not it. If we can manage to get technologies, institutions get into technologies, I know that I'm very sorry, but I just thought that I would set the ground for the other meetings. It is very essential to look into how do we plan our future cities. If we really want to have a better future for our kids, but if we don't plan properly, I think we would end up giving them that inherit that we unfortunately, without knowing, our grandparents couldn't doing. Also, choosing the materials. We have to identify what materials we use for the built environment, whether it is gases, what other alternatives. There are some good gases, but maybe a little bit expensive. Maybe it's not available. Maybe. There are also some alternatives to cements. One can use that. And most of all, and that I think that the most important thing is to, when you design as an architect, or when you want to do something useful, there is one thing, and one thing only, you really need to think about. Is sustainability. How sustainable is this building? And how durable it is. If we can't think that way, then we'd probably be migrating to the next couple of decades with tools that our youth can use. And we leave our Mother Earth clean enough to be useful for all mankind and all other biodiversity. Thank you very much. I've taken more than the time given to me. Thank you.
Thanks, and it's a very hard act to follow, Your Excellency. Extremely inspiring speech. And all distinguished guests today, it's really a pleasure to be here with you at the Heriot-Watt University as part of this Climate Hub initiative during COP28. It's been said by several that the UN estimates that our built environment, both buildings and infrastructure, contribute to about 40% of the world's carbon emissions. And 15% of those emissions are from cement, steel, iron, and aluminum, which are used in construction. These numbers underscore the enormous impact that the built environment has on climate change. At the same time, they point to the opportunity the sector has to be part of the solution. This is important because the planet cannot reach net zero without decarbonizing the built environment. Each of you sitting in this room, and I understand there's a number of real estate investors, developers, sovereign wealth funds, as well as contracting firms. So each one of you sitting here today in this room can build towards the road to net zero by decarbonizing your businesses and activity. And indeed, you've probably already committed to doing so. The path, however, to get there may seem elusive. If you're looking for a solution to get started on the road to decarbonizing, I think this is where I need to change. Should have done that earlier. To decarbonizing your assets and you're future-proofing your business, look no further. Rolling out the RICS whole life carbon assessment on each of your projects is the solution for you. Many of your companies may have already joined the 52% of the Forbes Global 2000 list, which have committed to a net zero or a carbon zero target plan for 2030, 2040, or 2050. Most of you live in the 76% of countries where the governments have targeted net zero. Here at COP28, as you all know, one of the main objectives is the global stocktake. This is the first time since the Paris Agreement that we will assess how close or how far away we are from achieving the necessary emissions reductions and how much more work needs to be done. The goal is to re-up those national commitments for decarbonizing the economy and to get closer to keeping the 1.5 alive. But I ask you this, each of you. No, I'm not asking for a show of hands, but just give it some thought. How many of your companies are carrying out whole life carbon assessments on all of your construction projects, whether they be developments or refurbishments? And refurbishments comes into what His Excellency was saying earlier, keeping what we have and upgrading it. How many of you are actually calculating the whole life carbon on those projects today? Oops. Just under half of those who reply to the RICS Global Construction Monitor survey already do some carbon measurement, and another 30% want to start doing this. However, 44% do not measure embodied carbon, even though that's at least 15% of the total global carbon emissions and more than a third of those that we produce within the built environment. So why does whole life carbon assessment matter? You might say I've already said that, but I'm going to say it again. The World Green Building Council and the International Energy Agency have calculated that to limit global warming to less than 2 degrees, the built environment sector needs to cut its carbon footprint by 84 billion tons. Emissions from existing stock must be reduced by 80%. And all new development must be net zero energy by 2050. Any plan for reductions must therefore consider emissions at every stage of the project lifecycle, ensuring that the choices we make as we progress from scoping to designing to building to running to decommissioning to deconstructing are choices that minimize emissions and maximize environmental benefits. That is what whole life carbon assessment is all about. One of the reasons cited in our sustainability survey for the lack of whole life carbon measurement in the built environment is the lack of a commonly recognized standard. Indeed, the industry has been calling for clear and consistent measurement of carbon. This is where RICS whole life carbon assessment standards come in. This new standard, which we just launched in September of this year, so just a few weeks ago, is a huge step towards that outcome. It is the only comprehensive and global standard providing a whole life carbon methodology for both projects and assets. This standard is free, completely publicly accessible, and on the website using the QR code behind me. It's a great example of how RICS, as a global network of surveying professionals, which I hope a number of you in the room are amongst those, can set a global standard which can support something as vast and impactful as decarbonizing the built environment. We also work with our members to share example of best practice, such as the one from Australia. I think I've got a slide here. There, Lang O'Rourke is targeting operational net zero by 2030 and becoming a net zero company before 2050. Their SEPA joint venture is delivering a series of level crossing removals to disentangle the road and rail systems that are hazardous and congested. But what they're doing it with is where the real innovation comes in. Concrete is a major part of the program. And there's extensive piling and works for new bridges. But they wanted to decarbonize these projects without compromising the durability of the finished product or complying with stringent specifications. So they worked with their supply chain. They worked with their client. They worked with joint venture partners. This is where I think we were speaking about earlier, His Excellence brought up, we need to work together. And they innovated. And now they're using a lower carbon cement mix, targeting cement because it accounts for around 60% of the company's total emissions. They collected extensive product data from their suppliers. They analyzed the opportunity for carbon savings against their technical requirements. And from this, they selected and developed a product, worked with the client and regulators to gain approval for use. Not only was the mix lower carbon, but it turned out to perform better than the existing product. It's more resistant to chemical attack and corrosion, and its lower heat hydration reduces risk from thermal cracking as the concrete sets. By using the mix for around 18,000 cubic meters of concrete, they cut carbon emissions by 4,000 tons. This is a great start. It may not seem like a lot when we heard about the billions of tons we need to cut, but if in each project we can be innovating and working together to find solutions and measuring the carbon upfront, designing differently with the carbon in mind, this is where we can have an impact. You may think that this sounds complicated and that your teams don't have the expertise or the experience required to carry out a whole life cycle carbon assessment. No, not to worry. You are not on your own. RICS is readying our members to support you, to respond to those needs and those of the market, to carry out accurate, comparable, and standardized whole life carbon assessments, and to support the deployment of the standard. We're also developing a suite of training modules to accompany the rollout of the whole life carbon standard in 2024. The opportunity to create an accredited carbon assessor status is also being looked at. So you see, RICS not only worked with the entire sector to develop a new standard, we're now going to accompany that with the training that we need on the ground for those assessors to be trained up and be able to carry these out. But before I talk more about the standard, I want to put it into context. Our built-in natural environment is both the background upon which the current climate crisis plays out, but it's also one of its most impactful constituents. At the same time, and despite the prevailing economic challenges, clear decarbonization and resilience strategies will go a long way to future-proofing your real estate holdings in several ways. Urban regions are experiencing escalating costs due to climate-related hazards like heat waves, floods, storms, and droughts. Here in the UAE, you've been there as well. You know what these things can do. These factors are significantly affecting building owners, emphasizing the need for proactive measures. The surge in demand for sustainable buildings aligns with corporate low-carbon objectives and the growing expectation of employees. So there's already two good reasons to be decarbonizing your portfolio. This will really shift and profoundly influence leasing markets on a broad scale. And finally, by setting forth and measuring progress towards a clear decarbonization strategy, you can anticipate more stringent financial constraints and rigorous regulations that are on the horizon. Your businesses will increasingly encounter heightened building performance criteria and mandatory corporate disclosure requirements. So, taking proactive steps now ensures readiness for these forthcoming challenges and gives you the opportunity to be positioned to take advantage of the change in our economy, our global economy. Climate change is affecting the built and natural environment sectors today, and in this part of the world, it's happening faster than elsewhere. In the Middle East, average temperatures have increased at twice the global rate, meaning more and more people are and will be exposed to extreme heat. In the UAE in July 2022, the highest rainfall for 27 years brought flooding, with nearly 4,000 people displaced. This is part of a pattern of changing rainfall that means parts of the Middle East and North Africa are seeing more severe drought, even as others suffer flooding. Resilience to extreme weather is also needed and should be a factor when scoping potential projects. Addressing carbon emissions is part of the long-term solution. That doesn't mean that it's straightforward, though. I've already set out the scale of the task, eliminating 84 billion tons of emissions. With that goal in mind, measuring, understanding, and shrinking whole life carbon cost is essential. And to do this, common standards are needed by the industry to provide consistent assurance and confidence that decisions about land use, building, and infrastructure, construction, and property management are well-founded, defensible, and effective. Adopting long-term thinking about reuse and recycling and refurbishment are also key issues promoted through the use of a whole life carbon assessment. And I think this is where I also agree that we need to think about different ways of our sector, building, developing, designing, procuring. Carbon is not the be-all, end-all of the built environment's impacts on the planet. Did you know that only 1% of the materials from a standard demolition process are reused, destroying value for the remaining 99%, creating over 50% of the planet's waste, and consuming over 50% of our dwindling primary resources along the way? Yet, we continue to build a city the size of Paris every week. You might recognize the view from the Trocadero there. Building anything uses embodied carbon, and the carbon clock is ticking. Our take, make, waste linear economy is the problem. According to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, a circular economy could reduce global CO2 emissions from building materials by 38% in 2050 by reducing demand for steel, aluminum, cement, and plastic. Embracing and facilitating a change towards a more circular economy where materials never become waste and nature is regenerated is of utmost importance. The circular economy will not only reduce embodied carbon, but also reduce the use of precious natural resources and damaging excavation and mining practices and eliminate excessive waste, allowing positive impacts on biodiversity, local living conditions, and even employment creation. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about a different way forward for our industry. At building level, moving towards the circular economy will require extensive changes to the way teams design, measure, cost, procure, construct, manage, value, and deconstruct buildings. RACS will have an important role in providing the guidance and standards for our membership and beyond to be deployed in this budding new approach. Policymakers, regulators, investors, insurers, technical building controllers, and others will need to be brought along on this journey that requires the full ecosystem to rethink our ways of producing, managing, and quality assuring and valuing our construction and real estate assets. RACS has a role in thought leadership and advocacy towards our membership and towards the wider sector, and that will be a key facilitator for change. RACS will be the convener of the property industry, creating a space for pragmatic experimentation in the circular economy to take place and to be supported and nurtured. One example is recent work by Fabrics to reuse, a developer in the UK, to reuse 139 tons of reclaimed structural steel in 2 London projects. This will save 80% of emissions compared to the usual route of recycling the same steel, and around 96% of emissions compared to using completely new steel. That's already 200 tons of emissions avoided for this one scheme. So you see, in fact, reuse can be a very effective way of reducing our embodied carbon at the same time as saving our precious resources and eliminating waste. New standards for using reclaimed steel will make it easier to source this material with confidence, making it a more attractive option. And on a smaller scale, RICS itself repurposed fittings and equipment when refurbishing our Birmingham office, avoiding some 54 tons of waste going for disposal and reducing embodied carbon by 40%. If your company has a case study or a pilot project to highlight in this area, please reach out to the RICS team to see how we can share knowledge and practical experience and leverage that within the wider network. We think that by promoting best and innovative practices across the globe is the best way to share knowledge and to bring teams together to work together towards a better future for our environment. And now back to the RICS Whole Life Carbon Standard itself, which in its new version, in its new version applies to both buildings and infrastructure and across the world. This means that professionals can assess whole life carbon across all sectors and real assets, and even have a standard approach to assessing and reporting contingency where there's uncertainty in those estimates. We've aligned the whole life cycle carbon assessment with International Cost Management Standard, ICMS 3, to provide greater global consistency in construction costing. And we've incorporated the latest industry-agreed definitions for carbon terminology, enabling a clear and consistent approach and interpretation. Because what you can measure, you can manage. And what you can measure consistently, you can benchmark and compare, meaning you can make better carbon and life cycle choices for your assets. Alongside this standard, our Built Environment Carbon Database, launched in the UK a few weeks ago, will collect and supply product and entity-level data to the industry, building up a data set to improve emissions, estimating, and benchmarking, supporting all that better decision-making. So, does that mean we're all good now? Not exactly. A standard is only as useful as its application. Without use, it's simply a meaningless text on an unread page. So the challenge for those in this room and for the wider industry is to drive adoption of this standard, to engage with, advocate for, and most importantly, use this new standard. Whether in planning, construction, operation, or investment, this standard is a way to quantify through-life carbon costs, not as a mere accounting exercise, but as a step on the way to reducing and even eliminating those costs. For your business to be impactful, to lead on the way to decarbonizing your assets, you need to understand, own, and reduce your building's environmental impacts. These standards will facilitate the understanding. The ownership, the reduction, is on each of you. The earlier you and your business start on a decarbonization journey, the more competitive advantage you will create, the more emulation you will stimulate within your peer group, all in the best interests of the planet. The path to carbon zero is not a linear path and not without obstacles. This means that there's some very hard conversations ahead, some choices that may feel difficult in the short term, some decisions that may invite criticism from those less knowledgeable or less committed. But if you think that the discussion about reducing cement use or energy consumption or deploying secondhand materials will be difficult, always remember they are necessary to provide the best chances for our planet's livability. I believe that the 2050 target for net zero is still within reach if we commit to pursue it wholeheartedly. We sit and stand today in a region of the world where city after city, project after project, show what can be achieved when ambition is high and activity is given clear purpose. Just look at what our industry can achieve. Buildings that inspire awe, infrastructure projects of a mind-boggling scale, continually reshaping whole cities and landscapes. And specifically come to mind, I was lucky enough to take a little detour from COP28 yesterday and visit Palm Jumeirah. And I also was lucky enough on Monday to have a visit of Masdar, the new city. And I see how this continual reshaping of cities and landscapes here in the UAE is possible. We can do, when we put our mind to it, we can do wonderful things. This climate challenge, too, is well within our capabilities. This opportunity of a better future can be within your grasp. Oops. Thank you.
Can I add a very warm welcome to today's event from Heriot-Watt University and from the Centre of Excellence in Smart and Sustainable Construction. I really am hoping that everybody is here for the day and that you have an opportunity to look around upstairs as well as join the event. We have scheduled, Cather will pick up actually at the end of this session some advice, but we are hoping that during the lunch break you have time to visit our 6th floor, where you can see the 3 at the bottom of the list here. So we have a clean tech exhibition, we have an interactive research showcase, and we have a future skills showcase. So please do visit. There's loads to see. We only have an hour though for lunch and the visit, so we might need to move quickly through those things. I'm really delighted to co-host today's event with the UUBC. SESC is something that we have been working on since 2019 within the university. You can see here that the purpose is to stimulate industry-led innovations and research-driven solutions to address challenges in the built environment. And we're delighted that His Excellency is the chair of our non-executive board. So really, really pleased to be here today and to have this opportunity to speak to you. And what I'd like to do over the next 20 minutes or so before I hand over to my colleague who is Centre Manager, I'd like to just introduce a bit about the university, bit about the Centre of Excellence in Smart Construction, and then I think maybe the key thing is I'd like to just quickly discuss with you the role that universities have, in particular, in decarbonising the built environment. So Heriot-Watt, first of all, apologies if some of you know this, you might have heard some of this before. I think it's fascinating, actually. We have a 203-year history. So we go all the way back to 1821, when the Edinburgh School of Arts was established as a mechanics institute. And I don't know who has travelled and come across mechanics institutes globally, but they are fantastic buildings, wonderful seats of learning. They usually have wonderful architecture as well, which always helps. But in 1821, the Mechanics Institute, the School of Arts, was established in Edinburgh. It was founded to support the development of skills in what was at that point seen as an unskilled workforce. And so there's a bit of an analogy here when we look at where we are today, because what we want to do is we want to skill for net zero and for decarbonisation. So that Mechanics Institute, established in 1821, eventually became Heriot-Watt University, and you can see here that we were awarded our full university status by Royal Charter in 1966. We are quite, I don't think we're quite international, we are very international. We have 3 international campuses, obviously the one in the UK, here in Dubai, and also in Malaysia. And the numbers shown on the table here just give you a sense of scale of each of those locations. Now, to come to research, because this is where we feed into decarbonising the built environment, to come to research, what we do is we channel our research through what's referred to as our global research institutes. And you can see here that we have 4. We have 4 global research institutes in total. The biggest by far is our Net Zero Global Research Institute, as you might imagine. So everything that we do in terms of research feeds into the GRIs. The Net Zero is the biggest, as you might anticipate, and essentially covers all of the research and innovation that we do in the net zero space. And much of this obviously is focused on decarbonisation, much of it also on energy, circular economy, hydrogen and materials. The Lyle Centre, I'm not sure who's been in Edinburgh on the Edinburgh campus, but you might have come across at the entrance the Lyle Centre building. That's our Centre for Marine and Earth Sciences, and really is one of Europe's largest leading centres in this discipline. So they look at things like, for example, ocean oxygenation, the exchange of greenhouse gases between the ocean and the atmosphere, and the impact of plastic pollution. We then have our Health and Care Technologies GRI. This is looking at the development of the next generation of medical devices. Some examples, because we're now slightly off topic, but very quickly, some examples. They look at things like rapid diagnosis, non-invasive treatments, super resolution imaging, and medical ultrasound. And then fourth, and there is a bit of a link here with decarbonising the built environment, is our Robotarium. Again, fantastic building, and from a building engineering perspective, somewhere that if you ever get the chance to visit, you definitely should. It's based on our campus, and it's run in conjunction with the University of Edinburgh, and is a world-leading centre for robotics. It looks at robotics and autonomous systems, human robotics interactions, and high-precision manufacturing. And as you might imagine, there's a strong coupling with AI here, and I think this is where we drift into built environment and the things that we can do in terms of decarbonising. We also have, and I believe the meeting is just next door actually, we also have our Industrial Decarbonisation Research and Innovation Centre. Now this is a 20 million UKRI, that's the UK Research and Innovation Government Fund, led by Professor Marotta Veiler from Heriot-Watt University. She's on campus today, as I say, I think she's next door. And really what this centre does is looks to develop innovative decarbonisation solutions at pace and at scale. And these systems have to take, and we have to translate this to the built environment as well, a holistic decarbonisation view. So that particular centre involves research organisations, industry, government, NGOs, the public, trade organisations, and policymakers, and aims to create multidisciplinary solutions that cut across all of the sectors. And it focuses, as you can see from the slide here, on those high-density industrial areas, of which concrete, of course, is one, feeds into one. And then if we come down to where we are in terms of research at the institute level, very, very quickly, we group what we do within Heriot-Watt built environment into these 5 themes. So we have nature-based solutions, innovative construction materials, future infrastructure, energy, and public health. And just to give you a flavour of the types of research that we do, and some of it has been touched upon today already, we look at things like advanced construction materials, including reinforced concrete, engineering cementitious composites and low-carbon concretes, novel cements for CO2 storage, new structural typologies for multi-hazard mitigation. And in particular, I'd like to highlight what you see in the bottom left here, which is our K-brick, which is the world's first brick made from 90% construction and demolition waste. We have an exhibition on the 6th floor. Please, if you have time today, please do go and have a look. It produces 1/10 of the CO2 emissions of a traditional brick, mostly because you don't need to kiln fire. And it therefore uses around 1/10 of the energy of the manufacturing of a traditional brick as well. So we do see this as research that feeds into, sorry, I haven't clicked there. There you go. We do see this as research that feeds into changing the way that we work within the built environment and decarbonising. So how do we connect Edinburgh and Dubai? Where we get to the point where we discuss how can universities help. As a university, we aim to be pioneering and global. We're very international by nature. We aim to take the lead in global sustainability and to drive knowledge through drive change through knowledge, research, innovation, and enterprise. We want to work collaboratively, and essentially that's what the Centre of Excellence in Smart and Sustainable Construction does. It works collaboratively with industry and with government. Within our teaching body, we have purpose-led education. This is not education for education's sake. It's not for a degree. We are purpose-led. We want to know exactly where we're going, where our students are going, and what our research and enterprise does in terms of feeding into built environment. And we want to be able to convene and lead in the leadership space. So thought leadership, new knowledge. And one of the things that has emerged from this is that we're very keen to launch, and we will be doing in April of next year, we will be launching a new carbon literacy programme that we will be making available through all of our campuses and to our industry connections as well. And we have a feeling that that will be quite welcome and successful. So in terms of collaborating, we issue a plea. We welcome your collaboration and your partnership. as SESC. We want to work together with you. We know that we can't do this independently, so we are very keen as the Centre of Excellence to work with everybody in this room. I think of all the slides, and many of the speakers we've heard this morning have fed into this, of all the slides today, maybe this is the most important one. How do we identify the clear pathways to net zero in order to allow decarbonisation of the built environment? And so one of the things that we're doing as a university is we want to make sure that we make leadership a priority, that thought leadership, in general. We want to raise debate around specific issues to underscore the need for a systems approach. So, for example, the IDRIC approach to making sure that we collaborate and we work across all sectors. We want to embed carbon literacy, hence the programme we're about to offer next year, to support understanding. It helps us speak the same language so that we get to the same point together. And we want to support practical articulation of the understanding of real pathways that lead to societal change and economic transformation. Now, I'd like to say I wrote these words. I didn't. These actually came from a CEO roundtable that was held on our Malaysia campus, asking exactly the same questions that we are today, which is how do we decarbonise? How do we decarbonise our built environment? So I've missed the slide again, haven't I? So in terms of coming back to SESC, I think it was mentioned earlier, we were established in 2019. We have a non-executive board chaired by His Excellency. Thank you. Continued support for which we are very grateful. We used to be, if you've known us for some time, we used to be the Centre of Excellence in Smart Construction. And earlier this year, we wanted to add the word sustainable because we want to feed into that net zero discussion. We want to recognise the challenges of decarbonisation in the built environment. So we work very closely with a number of partners and a number of associates. I'm about to hand to my colleague, Dr. Aguda, who will talk about the way that SESC runs and the kinds of examples that we have in terms of our operational aspect. But in essence, our focus is around research, innovation, and enterprise. And we have here, if I can make this work, we have a short video demonstration of what we do in SESC. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour. I'm going to pass to my colleague now, Dr. Nwendu. He will talk you through some of the operational aspects of SESC and hopefully you get a bit more detail on the centre itself. Nwendu.
I'm just going to say a few words about the Centre of Excellence in Smart Construction, and I'll try and be as quick as possible because I know it's close to lunchtime and maybe we're feeling a bit hungry. So as Lynn mentioned, we used to have the word, we didn't have the word sustainable in the Centre of Excellence in Smart Construction. So recently we had a strategy review and we decided we think we should have the word sustainable in there because, you know, a lot of the things that we do does relate to sustainability. I know sustainability means different things to different people, but we decided we'll call it the Centre of Excellence in Smart and Sustainable Construction. And coming out from that was the development of these themes that you see on the screen, because we thought that certainly addressed the key things, the key challenges that we see in the built environment sector. So the first theme is around net zero, targeting getting to net zero by 2050, looking at the United Nations SDGs, collaborating with industry and government, working multidisciplinary as well, and working with a range of stakeholders as well. So recognizing all of those things that are needed, but also that there needs to be potentially some digital transformation in how we work as a center. There's things around machine learning, AI, automation in construction, BIM, and all sorts of things. So digital transformation is certainly another area that we thought we need to be thematic in how we operate. And the last one is around community development, looking at well-being, health and safety, equality, diversity, inclusion, and also looking at things relating to the general well-being as well. So in terms of how the center has evolved, we've also thought about, how would we be relevant in today's society as well. But I think the one thing I would also want to say is these themes that you see are not necessarily in silos, so they do kind of cross-cut. There's cross-cutting across each of those themes. So, as a center, we're not going to say, right, okay, we're going to do a project on net zero, and so these themes may cross across different areas. Dr. Al Nuemi, His Excellency, has been mentioned a few times. I don't think as a center we can mention him enough because of the guidance that he's given us as far as the board is concerned, as far as the center is concerned, but also in terms of the development of a board. So as a center, we operate with a board, and the membership is chosen from a wide variety of experts that work in various parts of the built environment and other related industries as well. But these are individuals that have outstanding personal qualities, prominent experience, and they've got specialist knowledge, and they can really actually feed into, the direction that the center is going. We do have a broad scope of and purpose in terms of how we operate as a center. But one of the key things is aligning research and industry, and the board members give us a steer in terms of how we should be aligning that research with industry. And that's actually to support the needs of the range of stakeholders within the built environment and the broader industry as well that would be working with the built environment. I know Lynn's appealed to you guys to come and work with us if you're not working with us already. But the question is, why would you want to work with us as a center? And those are some of the reasons why we think it would be good to work with us as a center. Lynn's already touched upon the fact that we've got these GRIs, the Global Research Institutes, and what we do with these, we develop applied research, but we start off by, if you like, looking at potentially what the research needs are, how we can work together collaboratively as far as research and innovation is concerned. A few other things that we do in terms of the research and innovation space is, we have things like doctoral training centers, engineering doctorates, and I'll say a few words about engineering doctorates because I think that's possibly quite an important product that we have as a university. And we also look at potentially research commercialization, and some of that is up on the 6th floor, as Lynn's already mentioned. Some of the things that Lynn's already touched upon is our convening power as a center and as a university, being able to bring together various stakeholders from the public, private sector, from academia, professional associations and institutions, thought leadership sessions that we have, and a range of flexible collaboration arrangements that we can have. So the way we operate as a center and as a university, we engage with a broad range of organizations, whether they're SMEs or large multinational companies. We could even work together across different types of organizations. So we could be working with an SME alongside a big multinational organization. So that's essentially the kind of convening power that we can have. And those are the kind of things that we do. I think one of the things that is really, really important to us as a center and as a university is where are we going to get the future leaders of tomorrow? That pipeline, that succession planning of the leaders of tomorrow. And they would be the students that we have in our universities. And so again, we've got that link between the future leaders of tomorrow, the leaders of today, the middle managers. But, we can certainly provide that pipeline of students that are coming through. We're looking at things that we can do now, so say things that we can do within the next 1 year, things that may take a bit longer, say 2 to 3 years, and then the long-term projects. So we do have these, if you like, brainstorming sessions on a regular basis with Jacobs to say, what are the things that you guys are targeting? What is it that we want as a university? How can we work together? What are the things that we can do now? Things that we can do possibly maybe 2, 3 years from now, and things that may take a bit longer. It may be things that we do with just Jacobs, or it may be with Jacobs and some other organizations that we think may be appropriate to fit within that, if you like, initiative. The other thing is looking at the expertise that comes out from the university and the organization and twinning that expertise. So we may have things like roundtables or one-to-one sessions or some other form of twinning of the expertise between ourselves and Jacobs. One of the projects that we're working on at the moment, it's still kind of in the early stages, is gender equity. Jacobs and our organization are looking at trying to address some of the challenges around gender equity. It's kind of really at the early stages, but we're looking at sometime in 2024, the early part of 2024, sharing the outcome of the initial research coming out from gender equity. The other thing that we're doing with Jacobs is the engineering doctorate. And this one is specifically on geopolymer concrete. So that's kind of looking at the decarbonization space and how we can better use materials. And that's a project that's been undertaken between ourselves, Jacobs, and a company called Master Builder Solutions. They were recently taken over by Sika. And the way that's working is Jacobs provides an industry advisor. Master Builder Solutions has an industry mentor, and then they've got 2 academics from the university that supervise that particular project. The one thing I should say about the engineering doctorate program, the first part of the program is a taught element. So that gives the person doing the engineering doctorate an underpinning knowledge about topics that will be related to the research that follows on from the taught element. And finally, one thing that we have discussed with Jacobs, and this is something that I guess is certainly dear to my heart and some of my other colleagues, is where are we going to get the next generation of leaders from? And it's through us and through working with organizations like yourselves that we can begin to think about where we're going to get the next generation of leaders. So one of the things that we've looked at with Jacobs is having what we refer to as Go Global interns. And Go Global means because we're a global university, Jacobs is a multidisciplinary global organization as well. There's no reason why we can't have somebody studying in Dubai and interning in the UK or vice versa. So it's kind of looking at internship from a different perspective, culturally, but being able to kind of move around as well. So that's something that we're looking at as far as Jacobs is concerned. But what you see on that screen there is basically a way that we're working with a particular organization, but we're looking at a range of initiatives. So it's not one specific thing. It's a broad range of things that we're looking at doing with Jacobs. And the final slide, you'll be pleased to know, is on a specific project, and this is to do with the blue-green roof. This as well is still at its early stages, but this is a technology which we're going to trial on the roof of this building. Would I be right in saying that we've got something on display on the 6th? Yeah, so there is some display of the blue-green roof on the 6th floor. So you're welcome to see some of the things that we're doing with Polypipe on the blue-green roof. But this is looking at trying to conserve wastewater and use it for useful purposes, but at the same time, go green as well. Maybe plant vegetables, plant trees, maybe be self-sustaining. Instead of going to the market to buy food, we can just go to the roof and get the meal. So that was a joke, but I'm sure you get the gist of what I'm saying. Right, so that's all I had to say. That's the QR code for those of you who are not familiar with us that you can use to access the Center of Excellence in Smart Construction. So thank you very much for listening.